Hello and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Kmet and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hey, Scott.
Hi, Jason. How are you doing? I imagine it must be a pretty busy week for you, considering the flu season is here.
It's my week before Christmas, or whatever you'd like to call it. It's a busy time of year for me at work, and it's good to have the break of doing this. So that's for sure. I'm kind of enjoying getting my mind off of my day job and talking a little soccer. How about you? How are you doing?
Well, speaking of the flu season, I just got over a bit of a stomach bug, doing really crappy on Tuesday and slightly better yesterday, but I appear to have made a miraculous recovery since then, which is perfect timing because, I'm excited to talk about soccer with you this week.
If you are a new listener to our podcast, Scott, enlighten us. What is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about?
So we talk about soccer in Calgary at the amateur, collegiate, and professional levels. We discuss the teams and the players from Calgary's soccer community, whether that's grassroots and amateur leagues and teams, all the way up to the post-secondary and professional level.
And this week, we'll be talking about Cavalry FC and their match last weekend against HFX and the final match this weekend against Winnipeg and what playoffs potentially could look like. We'll also talk about some post-secondary soccer, and we're also going to take on a topic and have a little bit of a discussion about a topic that, Scott, you wrote about today in your day job.
Yeah. So in my day job, I'm a reporter for the Calgary Herald. Today we got a press release from Calgary Minor Soccer Association, kind of about the need for more indoor facilities to facilitate the growing demand for indoor soccer spaces, and kind of calling on governments to fund those facilities, or at least provide some kind of financial support to make them more feasible and less cost prohibitive. So I did that story. It's up on the Calgary Herald and Calgary Sun websites and will be in the newspapers today. So I thought you and I could talk about it tonight. It's a topic that we've talked about kind of off air multiple times over the last few years.
Definitely. And I think it's when we start talking about covering everything from the grassroots to the pros, this definitely falls into right down to the grassroots. This is about kids that don't have places to play in the wintertime and stuff. So definitely, I think something worth discussing. And we have an interview this week too, Scott. Who's our interview with?
Yeah, we recently talked with Akwasi Junior Agyekum, who is from Calgary, but has had a lot of success away from the city in his soccer career. So he moved at a young age out to Vancouver to play for the Whitecaps residency program, I think at the age of like 15 or 16. And since then, he's bounced around a bit, but he won a national U Sports championship with Thompson Rivers University Wolfpack in Kamloops. And he's currently playing semi-professionally down in Australia. So he's had a really interesting journey, but he's also done quite a lot of impressive things off the pitch. So in addition to talking to him about his playing career, we talked about a nonprofit that he has launched called Cleats for Kids.
We'll run that in a little bit, but let's get started on the first topic of the agenda this week, which is going to be Cavalry FC.
Hi, this is Ali Musi, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Right, so we saw Cavalry beat visiting HFX Wanderers 2-1 last weekend, putting the team in second place with just one game left in the 2024 regular season. Jason, we both watched this game. I watched it from home. Toby Warshevsky getting back on the scoring sheet, keeping his good form going with a very well-taken strike from just outside the 18. But in typical Cavalry fashion this year, we saw the hosts give up the lead just a couple of minutes later.
It's a running thing. It just seems to happen all the time. And it happened again. Sitting there, I thought this is going to end up a draw. But then, pretty much right at the end there, we had quite an unlikely hero, I think, Callum Montgomery with a tap in off of after a set play happened. So they were able to secure the victory.
Yeah, it was a really well taken corner kick by Ali Musi. Typical for him to deliver the ball that well and in such a key moment of the game. Kind of went in off of Montgomery. Of course, he claimed it, and after it went in, the commentator on One Soccer did mention that this was his very first goal in the CPL.
I want to talk a little bit about Callum Montgomery. He's kind of had an interesting journey this year. Certainly not someone who's garnered the spotlight really at any point to speak of, but we've kind of commented over the season about the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs of his game. It's kind of nice to see him on a bit of a high in this game with the winner.
I think he's had a few unfortunate moments where it was like his fault that the other team scored or whatever. And that can happen when you're a defender. And I think in Montgomery's case, he is kind of outshadowed a bit by the fact that his defensive partner most of the time is Dan Klomp, who's arguably the CPL's best defender overall, right? In many ways, Montgomery is kind of a supporting character for Dan Klomp, but he has quietly had some really strong performances. And the fact that he's been able to, chip in with a goal now is really great for him. So I'm very pleased to see that he got to be the hero last weekend.
When it comes down to sort of observing the details of what a defender is doing out there, center back, I'm not going to sit here and claim that I can analyze those things really well. But, the thing I can notice is sort of appearances and stuff. And for a while there, he was having trouble sort of breaking into the lineup. And I know there were times even when he was always on the bench, but there were times where you thought because of injury and stuff, maybe he was going to end up starting and he wouldn't start. But over the last little while here, this last time Eric Cobbs has been injured, he's kind of taken that role on next to Dan Klomp and kind of really held on to it, because even now Cobbs is back, but he hasn't been able to really take back his starting center back job. So I think that just shows you sort of the change in the level of confidence I think that Tommy Wheeldon Jr. has in him at this point, even relative to probably a few months ago.
Yeah, well said. And I think, you think about, if you have Klomp and Montgomery on the pitch, like who's going to go up for a corner kick, right? Like Klomp is the target man on set pieces. So it stands to reason that Montgomery is always going to be the defender that hangs back. So you're not going to really see him contributing to the goal mouth action very much. But it was interesting on this particular play that he was the one who got on the end of it.
With that victory, Cavalry holds on to second place. So they're still a couple points ahead of Ottawa going into this final match day of the season where everybody's going to play at the same time. So let's kind of break down sort of what we're looking at here. But I think that the possibilities right now for Cavalry are, well, they're going to end up in second or they're going to end up in third.
Yeah, and if they do end up in second, I think that's obviously ideal, because then it means one less game potentially to get to the final, right? If they finish in second, they will travel to Hamilton to take on Forge FC, who've already clinched the CPL Shield. And the winner of that game gets to host the CPL Championship game 2 weekends later. But if they finish in third, that means they will host a home match against the winner of York, and then whoever they play, which will be the team that finishes in fifth.
Cavalry wins, they get second. Cavalry ties, they get second. If Cavalry loses, but Ottawa loses or draws, Cavalry gets second. The only way Cavalry ends up in third is if they lose and Ottawa wins. The odds are definitely in their favor to hold on to the second place position.
I think if you consider the fact they're playing Valour, I mean, obviously on the road, that makes things a little bit harder, but a team that's at the bottom end of the table, however, that does mean that Valour will be very much coming to play, because they still have a hope of qualifying for the postseason.
They need help. If they get 3 points in this match, and I think a couple other things have to happen. Pacific has to lose and Vancouver has to draw or lose. So a lot of things have to happen for Winnipeg to get in, but there's no reason to think they're not going to be going all in to get 3 points to, at least put them in that position.
That could make for a really exciting game. And Cavalry is going to want to finish second. So this match does very much matter, which means you shouldn't really expect any squad rotation. And another thing you don't really have to account for, Jason, we didn't bring this up, I think, but Cavalry has achieved the necessary threshold for U21 minutes. So it's not even an issue that they have to field some of their less experienced players.
It's just one less thing that the Cavs have to think about going into this match.
So one more bit of Cavalry-related news before we move on to our next segment. Credit to Josh Healy for this bit of news that goalkeeper Marco Carducci is going to retain his position as president of the PFA, the union that represents CPL players. Healy also reported that Bradley Camden-Fewo, former podcast guest, is also going to be involved with the union moving forward.
Carducci sticking around in that position, the players must be happy with how he's doing it. I think they're still trying to put together more of a longer term agreement and that sort of thing. So, kudos to those guys, and hopefully they can continue to do a good job in representing the players and getting them a favorable agreement.
Hi, this is Miguel Da Rocha, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So the next thing we want to talk about was the lack of indoor facilities in Calgary and how this was in the news today. There was a press release and Scott, since you did the article today for Post Media, I'll let you kind of just take the lead. I know we talked about it a little bit in the intro, but you can just lay it out a little bit more.
Yeah, well, the CMSA presented a lot of statistics that were kind of eye-catching that demonstrated the demand for more indoor soccer pitches around the city. So they're kicking off the indoor season a few weeks early. It's kind of already getting going. And I feel that a reason for that early start is to just, there are so many games that they have to try and coordinate. And they really only have 5 facilities across the city to host these games. So according to the CMSA, there's more than 1,000 teams registered this indoor season for youth soccer at all levels. That's a 12% annual growth compared over last year. And they've seen that 12% year over year growth since 2021. So basically since rebounding from the pandemic. And there are 120 more teams than there were last year. So CMSA Executive Director Carlo Bruno says there are about 6,400 games that CMSA has to coordinate across 5 facilities. So there's a lot of games to try and cram into what really are only 5 indoor soccer facilities in Calgary.
And I think, it's a good commendable thing that CMSA is trying to shine light on this. And I think obviously we're in the soccer world and we see sort of the lack of facilities and how it's resonating. But I don't know. It's kind of a tough one, right? The growth is undeniable and the need is undeniable, but it's the old story. Where does the money come from? That's the problem. It's like, building a facility like this is not something which is a surefire lucrative enterprise. So it's not like there are private entities that are lining up to build facilities like this because they can have a good return on investment. These are facilities that, they need to be built, but they're not massive profit centers. So like having a privatized company trying to put this together is probably not something which is likely. Would you say that's fair to say?
Fair to say. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, look at how expensive these facilities are. I mean, Bruno did highlight that the new bubble that's being built right next to the Calgary Soccer Center, it's nearly finished and it's going to open this year, but that's a $28 million project, right? So if you think about pitching that kind of idea to the private sector, I mean, they're going to say, how do we make that money back? And you say, well, you can rent it out to all these teams and you can host tournaments and stuff. And it's a hard sell, right? So it makes sense that they're, calling on governments, whether that's the city, the province, or the federal government, to invest more in these kinds of facilities. But it's a hard ask. The city is in a tough financial position right now, considering the state of other capital projects. We don't really have to get too deep into the weeds. But it's going to be a tough budget to pass for city council next month. And when you got, soccer organizations saying, hey, we need millions of dollars for our interests, it's a hard ask at this particular time.
There's got to be some smart people out there who can put their heads together and try and figure out some kind of plan or some kind of proposal. So it's not just as simple as saying like, we need grant money and we need money to build this, but figure out a way that you can propose something that it's not just asking for money, but we have a plan, we have partners, we can put something together that would work, but we need a little bit of help as opposed to, just asking for a big check.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, before we recorded, we were talking about this, and you brought up a bit of an idea about like a possible model that clubs could maybe go all in together, and then it's not like a club project where it's like the Calgary Villains Soccer Center or the Calgary Southwest United Soccer Center. It's like a joint effort, and then you've got multiple clubs contributing the funds with help from the city and the province and the feds, or maybe a private partner who gets their name on the building or something. But that's an interesting idea. Obviously, it's a somewhat unique problem. There aren't that many places in the world that have this issue because obviously different climates or different demand for these kinds of facilities. But a tough problem to have for the CMSA. Absolutely.
Yeah. One thing while you're talking about that, and I have not done this, and maybe probably as soon as we're done recording, I'm probably going to end up looking at this. But, I heard that, Iceland, they famously had that run of success, that one of the things that sort of led to that was in Iceland, they put together quite a few indoor facilities so that there was more access to playing in a proper facility. So I don't know how they did that, where the money came from, where the support is. Like we know there, like in Iceland, there's no massive clubs. It's not like they have like a few really rich clubs that were like doling out the money to build these facilities. So,
this is a story we should keep an eye on throughout the winter. Obviously, this new bubble facility at the soccer center is opening pretty soon, actually. Early 2025 is what CMSA executive director told me. So that's happening pretty soon. That's only a few months away. As we know, the Shouldice Dome has been well subscribed to, probably oversubscribed to, because it also hosts football as well as other sports. Curious to see how this all unfolds and if this has any kind of momentum with the city in the future or anything like that. We've talked about how much better opportunities to play are for Calgary's soccer players. Not that long ago, we were all playing in gymnasiums during the winter time. All of our team practices and things like that were at school gyms. So the fact that we're complaining that 6 facilities isn't enough, I mean, it definitely isn't. Like the numbers reflect that, but at the same time, it sounds like heaven to 14-year-old me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess that just shows how far things have come.
This is Kendall Showers, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Let's talk about U Sports women's soccer first. And I think a good place to start there would be the Dinos, who are continuing to roll along in their matches.
Yes, the U of C continue to be the headline makers in the local post-secondary scene. They dominated the University of Lethbridge 7-0 and 3-0 over the weekend. Now 10-1-1. They are in first place in the Prairie Division after MacEwan dropped 2 points in a draw with the University of Alberta.
Yeah, so that means that the Dinos will finish either first or second in the Prairie Division, no matter how their last couple games play out this weekend. Grace Moore, she's having a nice season, isn't she, Scott?
Fantastic season. She is the Dino scoring leader, and she grabbed another 4 goals against the U of L. And as a result, she's tied for first in Canada West at the moment with 12 goals in 12 games. And she's contributed a couple of assists on top of that. So she's high up in the charts for the overall points leaders as well.
Let's talk about the last couple matches of the season. So this is the final weekend of Canada West action, and the Dinos are going to have 2 home matches. They're going to play the University of Alberta on Saturday afternoon, and then the big one, they play MacEwan on Sunday at noon.
Obviously, both of those are going to be tough matches, but that Sunday game could potentially be huge for first place repercussions, because MacEwan's Saturday game is a much easier affair. No disrespect to the Pronghorns, but MacEwan will be taking on the U of L, who are currently 2-10. So very much expected to win that game. And then that game against the Dinos on Sunday will really be most likely to see who finishes in first place.
For sure. And so I think that right now that's the game with everybody's going to have their eyes on, and should be a good match. Lots of good storylines there, with, Dinos head coach Diogo Raposo and his links to MacEwan. And then you've got Grace Masala from Calgary, who's playing for MacEwan. So there's lots of things going on there. So it should be a good one for sure.
Yeah. And I think both teams will be very, very keen to finish in first, obviously. In terms of playoff repercussions, the first place team from the Prairie Division gets to host the first postseason game, which would be against the fourth seed from the Pacific Division, which at the moment is the UBC Okanagan Heat.
Just to wrap things up with the Dinos women, their national ranking, it remains at 7th.
So across town, a lot less to say for the MRU Cougars. They had a 1-1 draw with the University of Victoria Vikes last weekend, which is an impressive result. A good showing from them as they wrap up their 2024 season. The Cougars are now mathematically eliminated from playoff contention, currently in 6th place in the Pacific Division. They can mathematically finish with 18 points if they win out their remaining games, which would be an improvement from last year when they finished with 15 points and only 4 wins in what was their first season of 2, playing in the Pacific Division against BC opposition.
My name is Mo Gander, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Okay, let's talk about U Sports Men's. And this past weekend was a quiet weekend, Thanksgiving. I think actually all the teams in Canada West had the weekend off, the men's teams, but I know definitely the Dinos and the Cougars did. So we've got a big final weekend here for these two clubs with a couple matches for each team, both on the road.
Yeah, the University of Calgary will be taking on the Lethbridge Pronghorns, coached by Calgarian Vikram Virk on Friday. And then they'll have quite the long trek all the way north and east to head to Saskatoon to take on the Huskies for Sunday. And then MRU, who are chasing the Dinos at the moment in the table, they have the same opposition but switched order. So they take on the Huskies on Friday night, and then they have to travel back to southern Alberta to face the Pronghorns Sunday afternoon.
The University of Alberta has first place all locked up. So the Dinos and MRU, they're both in positions where they've clinched their playoff spots. It's just a matter of figuring out, who's going to be second and who's going to be third. It's those two teams will be in those two positions, just a matter what order.
Hi, this is Natalie Gervitz, and you're listening to YYC Soccer Podcast.
So let's talk about SAIT. We'll start with the women's program. Another successful weekend, Scott?
Yeah, 5-0 win over Ambrose, followed by an 11-0 win over Augustana. 6 clean sheets in a row now. Their cumulative score in those 6 matches is 30-0. What's more to say about this team? Hey, they're clearly overqualified, or they're too good to be in this division. They're walking over everybody. They're in first at the moment with an 11-0 record.
Yeah, I'm going to say it right now. There's not very often you say it, but they're so good it's boring.
Yeah.
Like, every game it's like, they only won 4-0 this game. It's just like, I'm kind of looking forward to the postseason because, they really haven't been challenged for a while, it seems. And I don't know if Concordia on the other side, we'll see how they end up playing. But it seems like at this point, it's they're just going out there and just destroying the other team. And like I said, it's kind of not even that interesting at this point. But, kudos to them. I'm not trying to take away anything, but it's like ho-hum, another 5-0 win, another 11-0 win. So they're in second place nationally still.
Yeah, very impressive. Can't take away from the Trojans. Achievements, it's just, I agree with you that, it's something we used to lead with in our episodes or in our discussions of post-secondary, and now it's kind of toward the end of it, we kind of tack on the end, and SAIT dominated their opposition yet again. But no, can't take away from anything that John Tallarico, Jess White, or any of those players some of whom we've had on the podcast have been able to accomplish in the last few months.
We'll talk about the Trojans men program. They did play on Friday and they defeated their crosstown rivals Ambrose 4-0. They're still in a pretty good position overall, but first place is pretty unlikely, I think, at this point.
Yeah, they can still get first, but they have to win their last match against Medicine Hat, and then Red Deer, the Kings would have to lose to Ambrose, which I believe would be pretty unlikely, and then Lethbridge would have to lose to Medicine Hat. So very unlikely that SAIT could still finish first, but it's not over until it's over, I suppose.
At the end of the day, you want to win the playoffs, I think, more than the regular season. So
yeah, and that's what eluded them last year when they had such a great regular season and then for whatever reason faltered in the postseason.
Hi guys, this is Kareem Bashir Bey. You're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. Have a great day.
All right, so we'll finish our episode this week with our interview. It was actually over a week ago, but we chatted with Akwasi Junior Agyekum, who, as mentioned at the top of the podcast episode, is a soccer player from Calgary, currently playing with the semipro club in Australia, in Australia's second division. So, as mentioned, we talked to him about his career thus far, his highs with the Wolfpack winning a national U Sports title. But we talk a lot about his new charity, Cleats for Kids, which is a really noble project that he and a friend started.
yeah, and he gets into the details of the beginnings of that and where he's hoping to take it. So yeah, let's run the interview now.
I'd like to welcome Akwasi Junior Agyekum to the podcast. Junior is currently playing down in Australia, but he is originally from Calgary, played with clubs growing up in the Calgary area, and then went to Thompson Rivers University and spent some time with Ottawa in the CPL as well. Junior, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we always like to start by asking our guests a bit about their playing background and their ties to Calgary. I did mention that you're from the area, that you played for a few different clubs before you went to BC. I know you went to the Whitecaps at a pretty young age. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into the sport and which clubs you played for, coaches you played under, that kind of thing?
I believe I started playing competitively at the age of 12. I started with Calgary Northside Soccer. Back then it was like, they were doing quite well in, I guess, standing and things like that. And then I moved to Calgary West just because all my friends were playing there. I played there for, I think it was a couple of years. Then I went to Springbank Soccer Club. And then after that, that's when I went to the Vancouver Whitecaps Academy.
I know you went to Whitecaps at the age of 16. What was it like to make that move at a young age?
Back then, before there was a CPO and everything like that, I guess in our side of Canada, there was only really the Whitecaps Academy. So that was always like a goal for me, like a dream, because, like TFC and CF Montreal, they're like a bit too far away for, someone from Calgary to kind of get to or get interest from. But yeah, I think that was always like the goal since I started playing soccer, just to get into a pro academy, and Whitecaps is really the main one. And then, yeah, I believe when I was 16 and I went on those few trials, because those were my first like actual trials. It's kind of like, just to see what happened sort of thing, and then just working out. And then moving there, I guess, was kind of tough because it was the first time like properly living away from my parents. And I was also like living with multiple different billet families, and the dynamic is always a little bit different. And then also just like the stress of having to, fight for your spot. Obviously, when you go to professional academy, everybody's like good, so you go from being one of the best players on your team or in your city to now like not playing too much or having to fight for your spot. So it's definitely a different kind of situation, but I think it helped me a lot, not just as a player, but as a person.
You ended up starting your university career and you went to Thompson Rivers University. So how did you end up there as opposed to, say, another school? How were you recruited?
Oh, so basically, I think it was COVID year, the 2020 year when I graduated high school. My goal was actually to try and keep playing, going for that professional academy route. And there was I guess a few things kind of being tried or that we tried to make happen, but were kind of restricted with COVID. You couldn't really travel abroad and things like that. That I looked at more of the university route. And then there was a few different schools interested just because like it helps a lot coming from Whitecaps Academy. But then I believe I got in contact with John Atzelov, which was my coach at TRU. And the big thing at that time was sort of, I made the decision to go to university quite late just because COVID kind of messed everything up. So I think it would have been July. And a lot of the schools were like, oh yeah, it's kind of late now. You can have it come in 2021. And I was like, I don't really want to just do nothing for you. But TRU actually had open admission and John was like, yeah, you come in October and get you settled in and everything. And then that was really like, that was one of the big driving factors. And also we really pitched, the idea of the 2022 nationals team that we had. So he's talking about the players that we were bringing in and how good the team would be. I guess he kind of like spoke it into existence since we ended up actually winning. But yeah, I'd say those were kind of like the two biggest factors.
You referenced nationals team. Of course, TRU won nationals in 2022. So we got to ask you what that was like. And it looks like you played a really big role in the team's success that year. I saw you got about some accolades along the way and in the championships, I think MVP in the final, that kind of thing. So what was it like to, achieve something that 99% of university players don't get to achieve?
Like, obviously it's an amazing feeling, but it's weird during the time, like, a lot of the schools, that's kind of something they aim like specifically for. During the time, all of us were kind of like, yeah, take it one game at a time, because if I remember correctly, we kind of dropped the ball a little bit because we hosted nationals. So we got an automatic place in it. Like in the Canada West playoffs, it was either the quarterfinals or semifinals. We lost to UFC, and we kind of just like, okay, we did just pick it one game at a time. And then all the hard work that we ended up putting in during the season, and then being able to lift that trophy with the fans that we have there, and the whole atmosphere is something that's like hard to describe.
And then last year, you spent a little bit of time in CPL in Ottawa, the start of the year. Do you want to talk about that experience a little bit and how that was?
Yeah, that was an amazing experience. So we got to go to Spain for preseason, which was, I don't know, being there and seeing the football culture is just honestly just an amazing thing. And then, being around so many good players from so many different places, like people from South America, people from Spain, people from places near me. I feel like I learned a lot, and again, like developed a lot as a person. You get to really mature when you're in that proper professional environment.
For the last little bit, you've been in Australia playing in NPL Tasmania, I believe, second division in Australia.
Yeah. With
Launceston City FC. Can you talk about how it came about that you ended up going all the way to Australia to continue playing?
From the 2022 Nationals winning team, my goalkeeper, actually, Jackson Gardner, he went over there first and kind of told me like, oh yeah, it's a great place to, improve at a new level, or a different type of level, different type of football altogether. So then I was pretty interested, and he was able to put me in contact with some people, and I ended up making the decision to come down here, and I think I came here end of February. Been really good so far.
There are a few other Canadians playing in Australia second division too, aren't there? Or there have been, like it's become a kind of a place that some others have gone.
Yeah, I think there was 3 actually from my team alone, and then there was 2 others, CPL teams, and 2 others from university teams as well. So yeah, it's definitely like a new sort of pathway to this into the program.
For sure.
Okay. So your season has wrapped up. How would you sort of rate the season overall for, I think the team ended up near the bottom of the table, but how was the experience in general for you and your growth as a player?
I think the experience was really good. As I said earlier, it's kind of like a different type of football. So like the grounds are, different. The atmosphere, it's all a bit like different. So kind of see the game in a different sort of way. I feel like I had a good season. Even the team as well, because sort of middle of the pack, and we kind of overperformed what we previously thought of us. I think altogether it's quite good to me.
So in addition to your playing career, we've talked to you about this through email and stuff but launching a not for profit, right? Can you talk about what Cleats for Kids is and how it all came about? I did read the about page on the website. It looks like a fascinating origin story.
It was me and my friend Amin. So I played with Amin at Calgary West when we were a lot younger, and we've kind of just been friends the whole time since. And it was really just one day both of us were like, oh yeah, we'd love to be able to give back to the game, because obviously I've used it to go to university now and create some connections and strengthening the footballing world. And me as well. I'm currently going to University of Calgary with the goal of going to medical school. Sorry. And he's used football to gain those connections as well. And both, I guess, just seeing how much it's done for us and wanted to give back to the game in the same way he's done.
I think it's kind of self-explanatory, but Cleats for Kids, I mean, is the idea of providing cleats and other equipment to kids who need help, a helping hand with that kind of thing?
Yeah, I guess that's like the central idea, more to give underprivileged children opportunities in sport. But right now we're really just operating also the nonprofit sector. So we'll do like, we did a river cleanup with some of the children back in, Calgary, and we work with, homeless shelters, things like that. So it's pretty broad right now, but I'd say the central idea is to give underprivileged children opportunities in sport.
You mentioned you're going to be heading back to Calgary soon. Is that going to be one of your focuses in the off season right now then?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we both want to make this as big as possible and be able to help as many people as possible. So we're definitely doing a lot more events, more partnerships, and trying to just help as many people as possible. I feel like when I say big goal, this is definitely like long term, like 10, 20, 30 years, but we want to have a big hand in trying to eliminate the pay-to-play system in North America, because obviously you look at other places in the world, you don't really have to pay to play football, but in Canada, the US, things like that, you have to. That might be something that's actually like hurting the level a little bit, because there might be players with a lot of potential and talent, but they just can't pay to play the game. So
yeah, absolutely. And the cost is only going up. I mean, I'm 12 years removed from playing minor soccer, but it seems like it's almost double what it was when I was playing. Registration fees, academy fees, extra training, tournaments, all that stuff that goes into it. Because it's become such an expensive sport, really.
To be honest, I do understand where people do come from in terms of like paying for sport because of, travel fees, equipment, things like that. But, if you want to get the best players out of it, you really need to eliminate all the rules.
What's your plan for the future in your football career? Are you planning on heading back to Australia, or do you have other plans, or where are you at?
Yes, currently unsure. So I guess we'll see what happens. It could be re-signing with the club or exploring options elsewhere. But yeah, I want to go back, work on physical shape. Okay, work on improving areas of my game that I'd like to improve. And yeah, definitely be ready for that.
Speaking of your game, I don't think we've talked to you about like your individual playing style, the position you play. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of player you are?
Okay, so I feel like this year has definitely been all around the place. We've had a lot of injuries and unfortunate situations at Launceston City. So I played number 6 role, number 8, number 10, even wing back on the wing a lot. I'd say my main position would be, holding midfield more as like a number 8. And I'd say my play style is more, a lot of high energy, running around, winning the ball, and then trying to drive my team forward.
Before we wrap it up, why don't you let everyone know how they can find out more about Cleats for Kids website and social media handles? Mention all those right now, and we'll make sure that everyone hears about it.
Yeah, so the website is cleatsforkids.ca, and then on Instagram it's the Cleats for Kids Foundation. So really, the main ways you can help is you could email us or DM us, and then if you have fair equipment or cleats or anything like that, or even if you wanted to partner with us in any way in any events. So right now we're partnering with a lot of different youth sports schools, doing events and things like that. So yeah, those are the main pathways to getting involved.
Awesome. And just to clarify, Cleats for Kids, it's the digit 4, not the word.
Yeah.
Junior, thank you so much for coming on our podcast this week and talking about, both your career as well as this initiative that you and Amin have started. it's great to hear from you, and we're happy to see that you're playing at a high level, you're doing well, and you're doing stuff off the pitch that's adding to the game as well. So kudos for everything you've got going on. Okay. Thanks again to Akwasi Junior Agyekum for coming on the podcast and talking to us. We wish him a lot of luck in the future, not only with his charity with Cleats for Kids, but also his career as a whole. I mean, I think he is clearly a talented player, and he's playing at a high level. And you have to imagine that if he ever wants to play closer to home, there's a CPL team that might be willing to give him a run out.
For sure. Just for one more plug for the organization, if you are trying to find out more about Cleats for Kids, their website address is Cleats for Kids, and that's the number 4. So cleats4kids.ca. Check it out. And thanks again to Junior for taking the time to do the podcast. Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can have this podcast downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other platforms. Check out our website at yycsoccer.com, where you can look through our episode archive and find other options to listen, including our YouTube channel. We also have links on the website to buy Scott's book about Calgary soccer history. You can leave a question or comment in the Contact Us section of our website, or you can interact with us on social media such as Twitter or Instagram or Blue Sky, where our username is YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.